Hey guys, welcome to Shino's Arsenal Daily, keeping you up to date on all things Arsenal. So make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel. On today's show, we're going to be talking about who's in and who's out for tonight's game against PSV, a little bit about Martinelli's form, and another Highlander that is absolutely killing it. Let's get into it. Saka has traveled to the Netherlands with the team, but Martinelli has not. So, according to reports from multiple journalists, Saka has traveled with the team despite having a knock on his foot, and Martinelli is not in the squad because he has a little bit of an illness. I think there's a bug going around in the Premier League. I think they said that prior to West Ham's game against Fulham. I think. Did they play against Fulham? Whoever, they got slapped. I know they did. So it must have been Fulham. Um, that several of their players had come down with some sort of bug. So there might be something going around, and Martinelli may have suffered from it. But there's a lot of discourse around Martinelli's form and why he's not really performing to the level that I think all of us know that he can. So Martinelli has 2 goals in the Premier League, but he's been more effective in the Champions League. So I think we've noticed that our players, our wingers in particular, are not as doubled up on in the Champions League as they are in the Premier League. And so he has a lot more space to run into. And as we know, Martinelli is really good at running in behind, taking advantage of space, and going 1v1 against his defender. And so he hasn't quite found a solution in the Premier League. And in this system, our wingers are required to be a little bit more well-rounded. They're goal scorer creators. I think when you look at players like Mane and Salah, how they played for Liverpool, they did a lot of creating and goal scoring. They created for each other. Obviously, they had elite fullbacks in their team like Trent Alexander-Arnold and Robertson as well, who did a lot of the creating. But you know, ultimately, Mane and Salah did tend to create chances for each other and also were tasked with scoring loads of goals, a lot of times 20 plus goals a season. And unlike Son for Tottenham, whose task is basically to get on the ends of moves and get beyond his defender, beating his man, Arsenal are just not really like that. Our players are not, every single player has multiple roles. Now, you can tell me if you like that or not. I do think that when Ben White said that, Arteta's fullbacks are defenders, number 10s, DMs, center midfielders, strikers, they were everything under the sun. It sounds great on paper to have these players that can do multiple things, but sometimes maybe you just want simplified roles for some players. And I do think that in Arteta's system, every single player has so many different functions, and our wingers are no different. They are goal scorer creators, and they have to be able to function out wide, isolated, inside a little bit more. They have to be able to come deeper and receive the ball under pressure. They have to defend as well. They have to do a lot of things, right? And so you have to find ways to be more well-rounded, and he's going to have to refine his game a little bit more. I think Martinelli is a great creator, and at the moment he's underperforming his expected assists. And last season I think he was incredibly underrated as a creative outlet, but his delivery and decision making has been inconsistent this season. I think that's what we've seen the most, like what we saw against Sevilla. He consistently beat his man, and he did the first part really well, but he has to pick somebody out consistently. Now, is Kai Havertz holding Martinelli back? That's a narrative that I've been seeing going around on socials. He's not passing to Martinelli as much as Granit Xhaka would, and they both like to make runs off of the ball and sometimes into similar channels. But there are also ways that Kai Havertz helps Martinelli. I think the runs that Kai Havertz makes in the box can actually help Martinelli get on the ends of moves on the other end sometimes. So there's give and take here. I don't think Kai Havertz being different than Granit Xhaka means that there's no payoff for Martinelli in this relationship. His runs, like I said, leave Martinelli open in the box sometimes, and maybe Mikel can tweak the system a little bit. Like we saw with Martin Odegaard earlier on in the season, he wasn't necessarily playing that well. And some of that is just his own form and maybe dealing with a little bit of an injury as well. We know he had the hip injury, but he was too close to Saka. He was playing like a second striker. He was too isolated out on the wings. He was not playing in zone 14. And I think that the position that he's playing in now, or the way that he's playing his position now, a little bit deeper, a little bit more central, suits him a lot more, and also allows Kai to get a little bit higher. So maybe Arteta can make a tweak to the system to allow maybe Kai Havertz to go out wide and overlap a little bit so Martinelli can come central. We haven't seen as much of Martinelli and Jesus swapping those positions in the Premier League, and maybe there's a reason for it. Arteta maybe is a little bit more strict in the Premier League than he is in the Champions League, but you do have to find ways, I think, to get Martinelli a little bit more central because that is where he does his best work. But so I see how I see how Havertz changes things for Martinelli, but the suggestion that it's just about Kai Havertz and us trying to accommodate Kai Havertz, I think does alleviate Martinelli from some responsibility here. And there are things that he can work on in his game aside from the tactical changes and the environmental changes around him since Granit Xhaka is no longer there. So he's 22. There's enough evidence there to, this season to show that he needs to work on some things that he can be more effective in without tweaks from the manager. So, from my perspective, it kind of looks like Martinelli needs to just stop overthinking, look up, pick out somebody, and keep it simple. When he does that, he's very effective. When he doesn't do that, he doesn't get the goals and assists that he should be getting. So, that's a little bit of my 2 cents on Martinelli and why his form is not as good as it maybe should be at this stage. Now, it is something that needs to be looked at because we need Martinelli in double figures, but he can quickly reach those heights if he just tweaks some things to his game. And maybe Arteta goes to the drawing board and says, how can I get the most out of Kai Havertz and Martinelli? How can their synergies work together? And how can they, make each other look better and things like that? So I would love to know what you guys think in the comments because I've been hearing so many things about Martinelli and I want to get your guys' opinion on it as well. Emile Smith-Rowe is also in the squad, which for a lot of people will feel like a boost because there are a lot of Gooners that are still, I think, hoping that Emile Smith-Rowe will make it. And why wouldn't you be hoping that he makes it? He's our number 10. A lot of people attribute his integration into the squad as the moment where Mikel Arteta was able to keep his job or Emile Smith-Rowe has saved Arteta's job. I've seen a lot of people say that. And if he could just get over these injuries, he could be a top player. You guys know my feeling on injury-prone players. I do think betting the house on players like that is very, very risky. And if history tends to repeat itself with players that are injured, and we've seen that over time with the likes of Diaby and Jack Wilshere and Aaron Ramsey, when you're an injury prone player, you're an injury prone player. And if it becomes a part of your story at some stage. And so it's not to write Emile Smith-Rowe off, but I have to say that seeing him back in training was great, but it didn't hit the same because I'm just almost waiting on the next injury to come. If that might sound negative and might sound a little bit like, oh, Scrooge, but that's kind of where I'm at with Emile Smith-Rowe. It's hard to get excited about him coming back into the team when it feels like there's another injury always on the horizon. But that being said, I would love to see him get some minutes against PSV. I do think that this is a really good opportunity to rest our key players. There is absolutely no reason to risk any of the players that we desperately need in this period. So no Saka, no Martinelli. He's not even going to be with the squad. But no Rice, no Odegaard, no Kai. None of these players. No Saliba. No White. No Raya. We need to go ahead and take advantage of the one opportunity that we have in this December period to get a leg up on our opposition. Some of the teams that we're going to be playing against are playing midweek in Europe, and they don't have the ability or they don't have the opportunity to rest players. So we have to use that to the best of our ability. I don't think we got enough from having 1 day extra to rest than Aston Villa. I think we look like the team that needed more time. And so Arsenal need to sit their asses down. Our important players, and I know that sounds bad, like, oh, there's less important players than important players. We're not in preschool. We have players that are really important to the team and we have some that are less important, right? And so the players that are super important to the team cannot be risked on this day. So that also gives an opportunity for players that are on the fringes, coming back from injuries, to have an opportunity to play in a match in Champions League and have some fun with it. PSV are also not going to risk any of their players because they're top of their league. I don't think that, knowing that they've already qualified and there's nothing that can change from here on out, I anticipate them doing some some rotation as well. So it's the one opportunity this season that we're probably going to get to watch Arsenal play a game and it be inconsequential, and we can probably just enjoy it. So if Emile Smith Rowe gets some minutes in this game, I think it'll be really good for him. Whether I think his role in the team is super important is not really that. It's neither here nor there. I just think it's nice to have another body to, have some rotational options, and maybe Emile Smith Rowe can get back up to the form that he was in prior to this last injury and add a little bit of something something. So I'm excited to see him in the squad as well. Now, the ones that you guys are probably really waiting on is Lino Sousa, Ethan Nwaneri, and Rowe Walters. They are all with the squad for the PSV game, and I expect all of them to get minutes. If these guys aren't getting minutes, I don't know what Mikel Arteta is doing. It is an inconsequential match that has absolutely nothing to do with anything else. We have already done the hard work. Please do the right thing. I'm not saying that, they have to start, right. We obviously have some squad players that haven't played a lot of minutes, and we have some guys that are ahead of them in the pecking order. But the idea that like none of them should play or none of them are going to play, to me is just a little bit like OTT. I got it when we were playing against, Lons, and it was, a game that actually meant something and things like that. Why Arteta didn't play MLS and Ethan Nwaneri, but to me, this is the game where it's like, go ahead and run out there. And from what people are saying, and what's being reported is Rowe Walters is actually going to make his debut, so potentially starting. Who knows where he's going to start? We know Rowe Walters can play right side of center back as well as like a right back, in the way that Arteta likes to play his right backs. They're usually center backy. And so maybe that's to step in for Ben White, who hasn't necessarily looked in his best form. Maybe he needs a little bit of rest. Maybe he's still carrying a little bit of a knock. Maybe for Saliba, somebody else that hasn't quite looked up to his usual level, maybe is carrying a little bit of a knock. This is a really good opportunity to get some of our players out of the line of fire, And so I would love to see Rowe Walters. I'm excited for him. He's in line for his debut. And I also hope to see Lino Sousa as well as Ethan Nwaneri. Mikel Arteta kind of spoke about Ethan Nwaneri, said that he likens him to a little bit of Jack Wilshere. And so maybe there's a little bit of wanting to protect Ethan Nwaneri as well, because Arteta did play with Jack Wilshere and spoke about, how difficult it was to see Jack Wilshere's career kind of go down the tubes because of his inability to stay fit, because he was overplayed at 16 years old, the same age as Ethan Nwaneri. So we have to take into consideration that Arteta has seen some things. He has seen some things, and maybe he's doing things differently this time around, or he's maybe a little bit strict in who he integrates into the team, because he doesn't want to expose them too early and potentially start the cycle that we saw a great player go through in Jack Wilshere. You guys, just a little bit of a story here is Jack Wilshere is definitely top 10, one of my favorite Arsenal players. He's really up there for me. I think seeing him come through the academy at a very young age, and there's a picture that I keep in my phone all the time. I love it so much. It's Jack Wilshere when he's like 16 and he's doing keepy ups with Cesc Fabregas and Robert Pires. He was so young, but he was so like ready to play in first team games, and he did. And I think some of his highlights are some of the biggest highlights for me as an Arsenal fan in the Emirates era, because I just think he was a fabulous technician. He was meant for more. He was meant to be a key part of the England national team as well as Arsenal. And it's such a shame the way his careers went, because when I look at some of those comps, you just knew that he was supposed to be something else. I mean, it's not every day that people that play for Barcelona say that he could have played for Barcelona in that team of that era in 2008, 2010, 2012. They had the best technicians in the world, and the players in Barcelona said that he could have played for them. That's high praise, And so that's just a little story time, is that like when I watch Jack Wilshere comps, I literally get choked up, because he was such a fun player to watch, but it was so devastating to see how his career kind of tapered off at a very young age. He was pretty much done in his mid 20s, right? And so going back to Ethan Nwaneri, that may be a reason why Arteta is slow to bed these players in, because you've seen, how players are relied upon at a young age, and it doesn't necessarily bode well for, the peak of their career. You want them to hit the peak and for them to have those years available to them in their legs, and it just wasn't for Jack Wilshere. And so, but I'm excited to see the kids, and you guys let me know in the comments who you guys are excited to see against PSV, providing that Arteta allows them to play. And last but not least, Chido Obi has scored 2 more goals. He scored them against Flamingo, and he did well to win the penalty with some good footwork in the box. And the second begins and ends with Chido using his frame and speed to advance Arsenal up the pitch, and a neat finish between the goalkeeper's legs. Another one that's is playing above his age, like he's very young and he's already playing U18s, U21s, and he could definitely he's definitely somebody that's playing, levels that are lower than his ability. But I'm looking forward to see where things go with him. He looks like an incredible talent. We spoke about when he scored, what did he score, like 10 goals in one game or something like that? This is somebody that's continuously coming up in conversation. And we know when we have Highlanders that tend to make these types of headlines, Gooners start to want to see these players closer to the first team. So let's see how he goes through the ranks. Let's see how he does. Um, you know, um, let's see how he does in these next couple of months. And I don't think Arteta will be rushing him into the side, but I am keen to see how they view this kid because he does look like a special talent. And so let me know what you guys think about Chido Obi and his 2 goals against Flamingo. All right, guys, that's it for the show. A little bit of a shorter one, but you guys know you will see me a little bit later because we're going to be doing a live watch along for the PSV game as well as the player ratings immediately following the game. Jordan from AFTV will be on the Friday show on Patreon to go over everything that happened in the week and to preview Brighton. So if you guys want to become a patron, I forgot where I was for a second. If you guys want to become a patron, you guys can do that at patreon.com/SheKnowsArsenal to do 7 days free to see what Patreon is all about before you actually commit to it. I know it's the holidays, so money is tight. You got to do everything for your family and stuff like that, but you could try for free and then ditch me if you want. I'm just glad you were there for a time. It's fine. But you guys, let me know in the comment section what you guys thought about this show, what you thought about Emile Smith-Rowe and Martinelli, my thoughts on Martinelli, Saka not being involved in the team, and which young academy graduates or academy kids you want to see play in tonight's game, what lineup you would start with. That's really important as well. And make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.